I think I'll start this off with a saying that I heard not too long ago, but it is so true. And the saying is that we are not be remembered by how we died, but we are remembered by how we lived. And I find that to be very true. When there's eulogies for a person that passed away, they don't go, oh, and he suffered a lot with cancer and all. Or yeah, he had a terrible accident. That's not how the eulogy goes. It's a remembrance of the life that they lived and the love that they give and the generosity or whatever the case may be. It is always remembering what a person did in his life. So in saying this, first experience I ever really had as far as hearing things, I was about 5. And we lived in Tampa, Florida. And my grandmother's youngest son, his name was Alfonso, he was called. It was Halloween night, I think. Not positive, but I remember them mentioning something about that. Anyway, he and another guy went to a wedding, and they were heading from the wedding to the reception. It was a rainy day, kind of like right now, and somehow they lost control, and my uncle was the one that got it the worst. The other guy had injuries, but he survived. But my uncle, he was in the hospital in a coma, vegetative condition for 11 days. Now, I'm telling you the story as it was told to me, but all of it wasn't what was told to me. Some of it was what I experienced. Anyway, I remember hearing, well, my grandmother was in the hospital with my uncle all the time. My mom was at home with me. When you walked in my house in Tampa, you had the living room. To the right, you went through a door and there was a hallway. My mother and my bedroom was in the front. My grandmother was in the middle. And my uncle's was at the very end in the back, which had a door that went out. One night I kept hearing footsteps, but it was kind of shuffling. And I told Mama, I said, Mama, there's somebody out there in the hallway. And my mother, no, there's nobody out there. She didn't hear it, but I could hear it. And I would look out, and I wouldn't see anything, but I could hear it. And it would stop at my uncle's bedroom door. That's where it stopped at all the time. I heard this for several days. And it was just a constant thing. It was the same thing over and over and over again. Always ended up at my uncle's bedroom. Well, the day my uncle passed away, I never heard it that night. And I never heard the shuffling again. Of course, I was young and I didn't know what it was all about. Years later, we moved back to Key West. And my mother, for whatever reason, went back to the house which she had sold in Key West and was talking to the lady of the house that bought the house. And she mentioned that, in fact, let me go back a minute. My mother told me that the lady was a spiritualist. I don't know, but this is what my mother told me, that the lady that bought the house was a spiritualist. So anyway, going forward again, my mom said that the woman told her, you know, I had a spirit come looking for you all. And my mother said, well, what are you talking about? She said, well, there was a man that appeared, and he stood at the doorway. He had one hand on the door jamb and one on his hip, and he kind of looked around in the room and said, where is the family? So I figured he was talking about you all. So I told him, well, they've left. They moved to Tampa. She said the spirit never came back. But she told my mother this was in October. I don't know if it was right around Halloween when my uncle had the accident or what it was. But when I grew up and I learned more about this, I figured that was my grandfather coming for his son, because it stopped when my uncle passed away. The steps no longer sounded when my uncle passed away. So I always believed that it was a very possibility that it was a possibility that it was my grandfather. Of course, you know, we don't know, and I was very young, but one thing I do know is they were footsteps, and I knew where they led to, and I knew when they stopped. And I remember that, even all these years, say 70 years ago, I still remember it so clearly. So anyway, guys, peace, love, hugs to each and every one of you.